I'll go back to Zoom.
Let me know. Just see if it goes on live. Let me know. Well, hello, everyone. I am here with my dear friend, Georgia Shaffer, and we are going to talk about betrayal and shame. The shame that we feel and how to move beyond the shame you feel when you've been betrayed in a relationship or in marriage. And I just want to welcome you all here. I'm so glad that Georgia has been able to be with us. And I want to just introduce Georgia a little bit to those of you who might not know her. She's been on here before. She's a good friend of mine. Georgia and I have known each other for over 20 years. Can you believe it, Georgia?
Oh, went fast.
I know. Do you remember when we were sitting on your front stoop over 20 years ago in York, and we were talking about each of us wanting to write a book? And we made a covenant together that we would hold each other accountable to do our book proposals in our first 3 chapters. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. And so over the years, Georgia has been my mentor. I've been her mentor. She's sometimes my coach, sometimes I'm her coach, but we are friends, and I love and respect Georgia. And we did finish that first book, and we've both gone on to write other books. But I don't think we would have done it if we hadn't made that pact. I think we would have just gotten fear, get the best of us, and we wouldn't have done it. Procrastination and fear. And so that accountability pact really pushed us forward to get it done, didn't it?
Oh, it sure did.
So Georgia is the author of 4 other books. The first one was A Gift of Morning Glories, which is a wonderful book about processing loss and dealing with loss. But she's also done a great one on taking out your emotional trash, 12 smart choices for finding the right guy, and 12 relationship mistakes, avoiding 12 relationship mistakes that women make. And so she and I often talk to the same audience. And so I invited her to come back and talk with you about her experience personally, as well as professionally. George is a licensed psychologist and a coach. What was your own experience with the topic of shame and betrayal?
Well, yeah, I've dealt with a lot over my life. Of course, in high school, I was betrayed by some friends, as we often do, and in adulthood. But by far, the worst experience of dealing with shame and betrayal was 7 years ago. I was engaged to be married. We had been dating 3 years when suddenly, out of the blue, I got this phone call from a very reliable source when I found out my fiance had been lying to me for more than a year. And it was worse than the divorce years earlier for a couple reasons. First, I thought I had grown and I had learned about relationships, and I was much wiser
about it, right?
Exactly. It was humiliating because I had written How Not to Date a Loser, 12 Smart Choices to Finding the Right Guy. And there I was, betrayed. And it was one of the top 3 worst soul-piercing pain of my life. Betrayal, I didn't realize how deep and complex betrayal is until that experience.
Oh, I remember that. And I just felt for you. It was, and I was, I knew him too. I was like, oh,
I know.
I felt a little bad. Like I'm supposed to be an expert in this too. and so we just want you ladies to know, sometimes the experts can't even see them. They're that good. They're that good.
Yeah, they really are. And it hurts.
It does hurt. Yeah. And so I'd like you to share a little bit with women here, and then we're going to invite them to ask some questions. What did you do? Like, what did you learn to do to handle that? Here you are, the expert, and yet you still got swept up in the shame and the pain. So just because we know what to do doesn't mean we can do it, or that's going to particularly work for us. So what helped you to get through this?
Yeah, because when you're blinded by a betrayal, you can't think straight. You're, distorted. You can't see yourself clearly, let alone see the world clearly. So the first thing I did almost instinctively, but now when I work with people, I want them to be proactive, and that is gather a supportive team that will help you heal. And by that I meant, well, first of all, I sought the help of a Christian counselor and later a Christian coach. I had 4 good friends who were truth-telling friends, but they didn't beat me. They didn't add to my shame and how I felt. Leslie, you were one of those. They were truth-telling, but at the same time, they supported me through that. Then I had my church family, and I know this is not always true for a lot of people, but I had the body of Christ that was very supportive. My pastors held me up, and that was such a gift. And then the fourth support system I had during that time is I had healthy single friends, women, who either were struggling with a situation like that and struggling to rebuild themselves, or they had successfully gone through it. So I could learn from their experiences. So it was a wise Christian counselor, wise, safe, caring friends, my church family, that spiritual support leading me to the truth of Christ, and then other women, other single women who were healthy. Those 4 things created a system. And I have a picture here. Years ago, when they restored the Washington Monument, they first, can you see this, Leslie?
The scaffolding.
They first put the scaffolding around the monument, which then helped them as they worked on restoring the monument. And to me, that is such a picture of the structure and support system we need around us, because we can't do this alone. Even if we want to do it alone, it's impossible to do it alone. And so we need that structure around us as we restore our lives.
How, so the women that might be watching this are often in a relationship with a destructive person, and maybe they've been ashamed to talk about that. They're isolated, they're betrayed. He's watching porn, he's sleeping with other women, whatever he's doing that betrays their covenant. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to tell people about it because you don't want to get in trouble with him. And so where does that kind of woman who can't tell or doesn't have that support system, how can they begin to build that? How do you, I think one of the things that we talk a lot about in my groups and Conquer and things is, hey, ladies, you need healthy girlfriends. You definitely need healthy girlfriends. Even if you're in a bad marriage, even if you're in a good marriage, you need healthy girlfriends because things go wrong and life happens and you need a support system. Everyone does.
Right. And you're right. Some people are out there. I hear it all the time. I don't have anybody that understands what it's like to be a Christian and be lied to. And, here you are in a marriage and now it's shattered. They deceived you financially and took all your money. And you're embarrassed. And the shame is you think you're unworthy, you're inadequate, you're unlovable.
You're
so
stupid. Yeah.
Oh, that was a comment I got, I felt it myself. How could you be so stupid? And so you want to hide. And that's the very thing that's going to keep you isolated and it's going to prevent you. It'll keep you stuck and then you can't move on. So yeah, in spite of that, whether it be Conquer or I have a group for people after divorce rebuild, these are open groups that you can join. So if you're telling me you don't have a friend or you don't have a caring church, there's still other ways and you got to be proactive. So don't believe the lie, you're in it by yourself, because again, you don't have to be.
Well, I think it is very healing actually to be with other women who have had that happen to them too, because I think when you see that they're smart and they're kind and they're beautiful and they were betrayed. I mean, I remember, this is a bad thought, but I remember when I saw that Christy Brinkley's husband cheated on her and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. Like he didn't cheat on her because she wasn't pretty enough, I mean, like, why would a man do that? And so it's not about her. It's not about her. It shamed her, but it's not about her. And I think seeing other women who that bad thing has happened to, your husband's cheated on them and they're beautiful and they're amazing women and they're intelligent and you don't feel so shamed when you can share with other women who have experienced that and you respect and like them and you think, I can respect and like myself even if something bad happened.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely right. It's very restoring. And it enables you to see, you're not as stupid as you think you are.
So you sort of got
I
on this
feel.
quest. You had this support group, but you sort of got on this quest to find the right answers. What were the questions you were asking to find the right answers?
Well, usually when we're betrayed, what I hear over, and the word is over and over and over again, we ask the question, how did I not see this? You know, how could I be so stupid? What did I minimize? Why couldn't I see these things all added up? Or what was their motivation? Why did they do this to me? Why did they hurt me? And so we
Or
ask these
why don't they
questions.
love me? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I must be unlovable because when this all happened to me, I had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And I thought, boy, you're a Christian and you left me and you betrayed me. I must be unlovable. And I remember saying that to you, Leslie. I have to be unlovable because it's the only thing that adds up. And what did you tell me?
It's not about you. It's not
I
about
know.
you. I use this analogy a lot, but if you have a diamond bracelet and someone throws it away, it doesn't make that bracelet worthless.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, just because they're unwilling to love you or they're incapable, that doesn't mean I'm unlovable, but you feel that way.
You
And
do.
then the other thing is, we can stay stuck. We want those answers. It's like, well, I got to know why they did this, or I got to know what it is about me. And like I said, it just keeps us stuck. So as long as we stay there, as long as we expect the person who hurt us to heal us, that they make it right, that they, undo and apologize, that's where we're going to be. We're not going to move forward.
I say that again because that is very powerful. As long as we're waiting for the person that hurt us to heal us, say that again, because that you guys have to write this down because this is important, because that's a lot of you are doing that. You're waiting. If only my mother would apologize. If only my parents understood. So say it again.
Yeah, well, I was there. I wanted the person who hurt me to then be the person to heal me, because if they did XYZ, then I could heal. And I had to get to the point, it didn't matter what they said or didn't say, or they did or not do. I had to focus on my healing.
Right.
Yeah, I hoped that these things would happen, but that's a hard place to get to
I remember,
realize.
yeah, I remember working with a man in counseling a long time ago, and this just reminds me of that. He was so bitter and angry because he was waiting for his parents to apologize for his rotten childhood, and they weren't going to. And I said, "Are you going to let this ruin the rest of your life? That when I need you to do something for me to heal, that is just so powerful." So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it is, but you want it. You desperately want it. And so there again, we got to be proactive. We got to realize, and that's where my support system came in. People like you who gently reminded me, Georgia, you got to move on. It's not what he's going to do or say or whether he'll come back, because that's what we want. We want him to come and say, "Oh, I really hurt you deeply. I'm so sorry." It's
What a
okay to
fool.
want those. What did you say?
We want them to say, "What a fool I was," right?
Yeah, please forgive me. I was so wrong.
Oh, we just
Uh,
want it so bad, right?
yeah. So we get stuck with that vicious cycle of wanting that.
Mm-hmm. And so what did you do instead when you kind of woke up to say, okay, I got to take responsibility for my healing because he's not going to provide it?
Yeah, I had to change the way I saw. I thought about the betrayer and the whole issue of betrayal. So I had to make the shift. And again, I am not telling anybody this is easy, because it's not. But I had to make the shift from wanting all these things, the betrayer, to my healing. Because as long as I was focused on the betrayal and the person who betrayed me, I was not going to give the time and attention to my healing, to the things I needed to do to move forward. And so you might say, well, what does this look like in your life? Give me something specific.
Right.
Well, I remember my Christian counselor more than one time, he said to me, I'd go on about how I was hurt, how I was, betrayed, and, how I was going to move beyond this. I felt like, like we said, such a fool. And he kept saying, Georgia, you need to shift from the pain and the deceit and what the betrayer did to you to the big picture of how somehow, no matter what it looks or feels like, this is God's best and you can move on. So in my case, I would think of all the things they said and do, and he was saying, no, you're going to shift from that small picture of all those details to thank goodness I found out the truth when I did. That
Or,
I
yeah.
Yeah. And that's not easy because you want to keep going back to, oh, but they said this and they did that. So yeah, that was huge.
So shifting to looking for the diamonds in the coal kind of thing, shifting from saying, what's the lessons learned? What can I be thankful for? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and here again, you need the people in your support system to sometimes point that out. He was saying you dodged a bullet, Georgia. You learned that ultimately the only person you can trust is God, and to build on that relationship and draw closer to him. You learned you're now more compassionate. I look at betrayal totally differently since that experience. I understand I'm so much more compassionate to people who are dealing with that. So we shift from all these negative things we want to deal on to the positive. And neuroplasticity, research in the brain of neuroplasticity echoes what scripture already tells us. Philippians 4:8, Paul says, fix your eyes or focus on the things that are good and pure and, honorable, fix on those things, because invariably we want to focus on the negative or even the neutral. So, but that whole shift is going over to here. What is, like you said, the diamonds in the rough? What are the positive things that I got to focus on?
I think we get caught too in the why me, and it's so unfair. This has happened my whole life. I've been abused by my parents. I've been abused by my husband. I've been betrayed by my friends, all of that. And so, it's very easy to collapse into that hole of hurt, and it's real. And you have gotten more compassion. And then we beat ourselves up because we're in the hole and we can't get out. And one of the things that you said about shame is that you would beat yourself up. How could I have been so stupid? How did that shift for you? Because that's negative. And how did you grow more compassionate towards not knowing he was a jerk?
Well, in my case, it helped a lot because most of the people around me had been betrayed by him too. Most of the people didn't see it either. But and we got blamed. We got blamed. Not only how could you not see it, but you minimized this. You ignored that. And so again, getting back to our own healing, well, maybe I did minimize some things. Maybe the truth is I did ignore some things, but nobody else around me saw it either. So what we need is, first of all, self-compassion, being kind to ourselves, write our letter to ourselves saying, something kind and nice. And what I kept repeating was, okay, you didn't see this, knocked you over the back of the head, but as soon as you did see it, you distanced yourself. You ended the relationship. You got help. So it's little things like that that we help to build ourselves up. But besides, again, we need that sympathy, that compassion, that even if we did do something wrong, we're still hurting. I've heard more than once people want to commit suicide after, deep betrayal. They just want to give up on life. So to blame them yet doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. And I think this is a lot of, what we need to hear as women. We want to be so together and perfect. And, you as a professional, me as a professional, to miss a red flag. I didn't see any either. I knew him for a long time too. So it's not that, it's always obvious, but even if we did miss it, even if there were, like, in hindsight, big red flags that we should have paid attention to, I think this is where we have to be kind to ourselves and saying, yep, you did ignore those red flags, or yep, you knew that wasn't the best choice and yet you made it anyway. And what can you learn from this, versus how could you be so stupid, as if I can't ever be capable of being stupid or blind or, wishful thinking
Yeah.
person. That's part of our humanity. We're always going to be flawed. We're always going to make mistakes. We're always going to miss some things. And so when we do, it's like we're sort of beating ourselves up like we should never be that way, when in fact, God says we are that way. That is who we are. We're blind. We're self-deceived. And if we could just accept that without shame, it wouldn't be nearly as painful when we see it.
I know. I know. And if we could go immediately to, well, next time I'm going to, but we don't, like you said, we just stay and beating ourselves up. The other thing I did do, so it's in a lot of ways, I don't regret what I did do. But the other thing I did was, while we were dating, I brought friends like you into the relationship to meet him, or, share what was going on. So that would be something I would do again. So we don't always throw everything out, even though it didn't turn out right. What are we going to do differently next time? And what did we do right that we want to remember
And one
and
thing
use?
you did do right, I remember him wanting to get married a whole lot sooner than you wanted to get married, because there were some concerns that you had about his own boundaries with some adult people in his life, his children. And so being able to say, this is a red flag that concerns me, and I don't see that we have a solution for this yet, and you didn't get married as quickly as he might have wanted to, which was a good thing.
A very good thing. That's the bullet I dodged.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the one question that you routinely asked yourself so that you didn't get bitter and resentful?
Yeah, you want to pay attention to what are you telling yourself when you're alone, the thoughts that are going through your head and what you're telling other people. And so it came down to, I had to, again, shift to that positive. And I would ask myself, and I tried to do it routinely. I put it in my journal so I could come back to it. But I had to go back and say, when I thought something, I would just say, okay, Georgia, is this going to help you move forward and, rebuild and heal? Or is thinking this thought going to keep you stuck where you are, keep you trapped? And so it was always, okay, this is what you're thinking. How's this going to help with your healing, or how's it going to hinder your ability to go on?
Yeah, that's a great exercise to do. Another way of framing that is, I often will ask myself, what am I thinking, and is it true? And what would I be like if I didn't have this thought?
Oh,
What would I be like if I didn't have this thought? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't have to have this thought. What if I didn't have this thought? Like I'm a failure, I'm miserable, whatever it is. What would it be like if I didn't have this thought? It's just a thought. Maybe I could let it
yeah.
go. And it's like a whole new door opens of awareness and insight, and actually power. I don't have
Yes.
to have this thought. I can let it go. Now, maybe I won't, or I don't, but I can. Knowing I can is empowering.
Making that choice. And in betrayal, you don't always know if what you're thinking is true,
Right.
because everything's distorted by the deceit. So yeah, that's a good thing. I can make the choice. I don't have to keep thinking this. And how will I be different? That's good.
Yeah, I think we can get, even if something is true, we can get caught in, so what would I be like if I didn't think about money all the time, or worrying about my money, even if my money is short? What would it be like to just not be irresponsible about it, but not dwell on what's wrong in my life? What would I be like if I didn't do that? And I think that can be an empowering way to see a way out, that you don't have to be a slave to your thought life. You can be bigger than that, because sometimes we sort of become our thoughts. We think that's who we are. That's not who we are. It's just what we think. And we have domain over that. The Bible says we can be transformed by the renewing of our mind. And so being able to catch those thoughts and renew those thoughts and say, I don't think I want those thoughts anymore. How do I learn to think differently? Just like your teaching, can be very empowering.
Yeah, because as long as you stay on those problems, they'll get bigger and bigger. But as long as you look, and move on and what you can do, then that's going to get more attention in your life.
I want to open it up to some questions, but before we do, just, you said that your world could shrink by staying in this fear mode or distrust mode. Can you say a little bit more about how that mindset of fear, shame, distrust shrinks your world?
Yeah, because trust is a difficult experience. And so it's easy to sort of say, well, I'm not going to trust anybody again. That'll take care of that. That'll protect me. That'll keep me safe. But, and then people often ask, and this is a valid question, well, if I go out and trust again, how do I know I won't get hurt again? Well, guess what? There's no guarantees that, you go out and you trust again, that you won't get hurt again. And so you want to take calculated risks, little risks. You don't just go out and, fling yourself out there. But, and I've seen this a lot, when people decide they're going to keep themselves safe and secure from that kind of pain in the future, they build walls. Here's what happens to their world. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And you focus on keeping yourself safe and secure. And instead of going out and having a bigger life, this is where your life goes. It shrinks.
Yeah. That's so good. I think, taking calculated risks and in a wise way, but to be smart about it, but it doesn't mean you want to just wall yourself off. The same as if you were in a car accident and say, well, I'm never going to drive again because that might happen again. Or if I rode a horse and I loved riding horses and I fell off, I'm never going to do that again because that might happen. Yeah, bad things happen and they might happen again if you keep, living life. But do you just keep shutting everything out that might cause you pain? And then what does that do for your life? It's very boring and small, and it's not at all how God wants you to live your life.
No, we got to reach out. So yeah, that's a real risk that we got to be careful of as we're rebuilding.
And that's why the support group and the community is so important. And I think that helps us to realize that we're not alone and we have people in our lives who understand, and we can take risks together. Or when we're taking risks, even in new relationships, we can bounce ideas off of the people we do trust to see if that's a safe risk and worth risking. And so those are ways we can grow. We've got a ton of questions here, so let me get them. What are the emergency groups you mentioned for people without community?
I mentioned Conquer, and I mentioned I have a group, Rebuild, for women after divorce to rebuild their lives. So there's, support groups out there, but you got to get in a community of people who are healthy. And I think the important thing is you want somebody to guide you that's been there or understands the process. You want wise guides that can help you move forward.
Yeah. And so Conquer is, a distinct group for women in destructive marriages. And we'll be opening those doors again at the end of March, if you're interested. And Georgia, you're opening Rebuild when? Or you're starting Rebuild?
You can register on February 11th to the 15th. And then the coaching group is a group of women we coach on the process of rebuilding, moving from that reeling kind of experience to being resilient. And so that the class itself starts on the 16th, but you can register starting the 11th of February.
And that's at georgiashaffer.com. They can find that?
/rebuild.
Okay, so
georgiashaffer.com /rebuild. And Shaffer spelled SHAFFER, because there's a lot of Shaffers.
I used to do the SCH, and that's not going to get you there. So yeah, good. I'm glad you said that. All right. It's extremely hard to recover on our own when you don't know how to do it, for sure. Let's see. How do you recover yourself when your character's been assassinated?
Oh boy. Yeah, that's been hard, because you want to go out there and you want to defend yourself and you want to tell people what's the truth. And I remember at one point I wanted to go to a pastor and I wanted to tell him what was true in this relationship. And my friend said, so why are you doing that, Georgia? What's that going to prove? And I realized I would only, look like I'm trying to build myself up. And Jesus did this. I mean, he didn't defend himself. He was quiet, and that's hard to do. But what we're told, vengeance is of the Lord. And it's amazing to see. In my case, it was a mere 3-6 months where the truth came out of what was going on. It's not always that quick, but you'd be amazed what God can do and the people in your life. But boy, that is hard.
And
Um,
I think the people who know you and care about you, when they hear awful things about you, they will come to you because they know and care about you. And they will say, I heard you're sleeping around, or I heard you took all of his money. Is that right? And you can then say, no, but he's creating a narrative that makes him the victim and me the bad guy. But no, that's not true. You don't even have to say anything about him, but you can then say, that's not true. And these people come to you because they know you and they like you and they trust you, or they've come to know your character. Other people who just believe someone's trash about someone without ever going to that person and checking, either they don't have a relationship with this person, so why do you have to go defend yourself with them if you don't have any relationship with them either, or they're not worth having as your friends. So if someone knows you well, like I know Georgia really well, we've been friends for over 20 years. If someone talked some trash talk about Georgia, I'd go right to Georgia and say, Georgia, I heard you're, taking cocaine. Is that true? Whatever trash talk you hear, I would go to her because I'd say, this doesn't sound like the Georgia I know, right? And we would have a discussion about what happened. But if I never even went to her and I just started telling other people, oh my gosh, don't invite Georgia here. Don't go Georgia because she's doing, that would say something more about me, right? That would say that I've not been a good friend to her. And why would you in a million years want to reach back out to me to correct that idea when I've already decided who you are based on lies without ever checking it out? So it almost does you a favor. It clarifies who your true friends are and who your true friends are.
And the truth is, in instances like divorce, people feel they need to take sides. So if they take the side of the other person, then they feel they have to do trash talk because they got to justify their, version of the story.
Yeah. All right, here's a question. My question is, a horrible childhood is so full of variables, or one man's hell is another man's heaven. I am so sick of kiddos blaming us for their awful choices. I have gone over everything I can with them to apologize. So much good has transpired in their lives growing up. I agree with the hole of hurt. When does it turn into, get out of that hole, you are playing the victim?
Yeah, I once heard, I was walking off the beach one day, and I guess his son was complaining to his dad of all the things his dad did to him. And his father said, well, it's nothing that therapists in lots of years and money won't solve. And he was basically saying, hey, we all don't do, like you said earlier, we're all flawed. We're not perfect parents. We're not perfect friends. And how's that victim mode gonna hurt you? That's a tough one.
Yeah, I think that's victim mindset in its glory, where someone gets into, you dinged me in life, or you hurt me, you harmed me, and you're responsible for fixing it, right?
Yeah.
Here's what you just said this earlier, that yes, people can do some little things or big things in our life that hurt us or harm us. And, even if someone harmed you by, running you over with their car and they're a drunk driver and you're in a wheelchair, who's responsible for your recovery? You've got to get healthy. You've got to get on, either you're going to walk again or you're not going to walk again, but how are you going to live your life is totally up to you. And are you going to live it waiting for him to fix your life? He's not going to, he can't. You have to.
No.
And so I think we have to teach our children, so you've got things to work on. We all do, there is no child who gets out of childhood without some dings from their parents.
I remember one morning I was having breakfast with my son in a restaurant, and I was apologizing, to what the divorce with his father and me had done to his life and all the things he had to deal with. And if only we could all have this mentality, he said, Mom, those experiences are what made me what I am today. A lot of my friends are divorced. Some of their parents don't even talk to them. And I understand where they're coming from. So if only we could take that victim mentality and somehow look at it, what did we learn that made us more helpful to others?
And I think we have a culture right now that is creating that mindset, a victim mindset. You owe me. You owe me.
Yeah.
If you harm me in any way, or if there's any history of harm, you owe me restitution. And there's something about restitution that's biblical.
Yeah.
But restitution doesn't come from demanding restitution. Restitution comes from the heart of the person who did the damage and is sorry. It doesn't really feel good if you twist someone's arm to give you restitution, does it? And so I think it's part of the repentance process, but someone else is as much as you might want to. I mean, I remember working with a woman who just wasn't strong enough to stand up to her abusive husband. And so this abusive husband sexually molested her children. It was stepchildren for him. So that's a very, not an uncommon thing. So he sexually molested her children, and she sort of knew, but she didn't know what to do. She just was so weak, and she feels horrible about that now as she's gotten stronger and as she's grown. And she went to her daughter and she said, if there's anything I can do to help you, I can even pay for your therapy, but I can't do your therapy. Right? And so there's sometimes you can make some restitution when you feel that you've been a bad parent or a bad person or have harmed someone, but you can't fix it for them. You can't make them get well. That's their work to do. And that's so much what we talk about in Conquer. And I'm sure you do too, Georgia, and Rebuild, that you've got to rebuild your life. No one's going to rebuild your life but you.
No. And, the other thing I hear about betrayal is, the idea they want them to hear X, Y, Z, and then they'll feel better. Is I often say, even if they told you and did everything you wanted them to do, you were still wounded. And getting back to being run over by a car, you still have wounds that you have to tend and take care of. You're still responsible for caring for yourself and healing. And that's so important to remember.
Yeah, I mean, you might be in intensive care and someone comes and visits you and says, I'm so sorry I hit you. I was drunk and I didn't see you, and I'll pay your medical bills. Well, that's fine, but you still have to do the work to get better. You still have to do therapy. You still have to, do what you need to do to recover from the trauma of that accident or that betrayal or whatever it is that you go through. And I think we resent that. Like I resent that intrusion into my life. And here's where your counselor was so wise. God allowed that intrusion into your life for you to learn some things in there. And as much as you don't want to stop what you were doing and have to heal and do this, that's where God has you right now.
Yeah. And life is not always fair, and it doesn't seem right. And the truth is, like you were talking about our mindset today of people have to make things right, is that now I forgot what I was going to say. I don't know. It was really good, but I lost it.
It happens. Well, write it down if it comes back to you. Let me move to a couple other questions. What happens if you confront the infidelity and they lie and it's a verbally abusive relationship?
Well, then you've realized, Satan's the father of lies. And are you going to continue when you know this person has been lying to continually give them the benefit of the doubt and let them harm you? There's a case of looking at the harsh reality of who this person is. Not easy, and you want them to change, but they may never change.
And I'm reading through Proverbs this month, and it says telling lies about someone is as harmful as hitting them with an axe. So if your husband was coming at you with an axe, what would you do?
You'd run.
If you're any health at all, you wouldn't stand there and take it. You would run, right? And so I think sometimes we have this idea as Christian women that, well, we have to stay married to someone. Lying to someone repeatedly is as harmful, the Bible says, as hitting them with an axe or shooting them with a sharp arrow. Would you allow yourself to be in a household with someone who's doing that to you regularly? I hope not. I hope not. God doesn't want that for you. So here's where you have to take stewardship and responsibility for your own safety so that you don't repeatedly get harmed by this betrayal. Right? Because you already know it's happened before. He's lying about it. It's going to continue to harm you, not to mention it harms him, because the Bible says, can you take fire in your lap and not get burned? Fool, don't do it. But if he's going to do it and you're going to let him verbally abuse you and lie to you, then what do you need to do to get strong enough to not do that anymore?
So you're not the target.
Yeah. All right. I just broke up with my boyfriend after 1.5-year relationship. I began to realize he wasn't the one. He is devastated and I feel guilty. Horrible. I emailed him the breakup 2 weeks ago, which I know is not considerate, but I dreaded it so much. What can I do now to do the right thing?
Well, at least you didn't text them. I don't know which is less. Yeah, sometimes we do take the easy way out because it's really painful for us. And other than apologize, and like we said earlier, don't be saying nasty things about him. Sometimes it's the best from both of you. And maybe you just need to understand that it's really hurting him right now, but somehow, some way, it's best for both of you.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
the
you don't
long
want
run.
to be with someone who you don't want to be with. And so it's rejection, rejection. This isn't, betrayal is one level of hurt. Rejection still hurts, and so when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
saying, I'm rejecting you, this isn't a fit for marriage, or I don't want to be boyfriend, girlfriend anymore, that hurts anybody, if they still want that and you don't want that. So I think by acknowledging, your own fear of, doing it, and so you did it kind of in the easy way with an email. I think even saying, owning that, saying, I wish I had been strong enough to do it face to face. And that's something I need to learn to do. And I'm so sorry I hurt you, but I feel like I needed to be honest with you. And I am so sorry that I don't have enough strength to do it face to face. And that's my bad. And I have to work on that. I think just owning that part can be very helpful for someone to know that you care about the pain you caused them.
Yeah, and in reality, you might have, even though you beat yourself up for the way you delivered it, in a lot of ways, would he rather know now after a year and a half than 2.5 years later? Because then it'll be harder to make that choice. So as hard as it is good to be honest.
Or 20 years later, after you married him and said, well, I never really loved you, but I didn't know how to tell you, right?
Yeah, and 3 kids later. Yes.
Yeah, and I've had different people in Conquer and speaking engagements come up to me and say, my husband just said, I've never loved you and I never had the guts to tell you. So we just got married, or, vice versa. And it's after that long, very painful. So you gave him a gift to say that we're not the one that's going to stay together. As much as it's painful for him, it's a gift. But I think, again, you can learn from this too, to say what's in me that's not able to have that conversation together in person.
Yeah. That's good.
How do you recover when you are still dealing with the toxicity of the ex-spouse?
Meaning they just keep lying and it keeps going on and you have to forgive and forgive, or what are they talking?
I don't know. It's just a question in the Facebook post. So I would say, I think that's a really good question, Georgia, because you don't have to deal with your ex-spouse unless you share children. Let's just assume that the toxicity is coming through the children.
Yeah, and then it's really hard. You'd love to cooperate with the ex because it's best for your children if you're both cooperating. But sometimes that's just not possible. And so then you got to come to that harsh reality that, you're going to do what you can for that child, and certain things are out of your control. And that's not in your realm of control, as hard as it is. And you want the best for your children. Not easy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And if anyone's listening and they're still allowing exes, if your ex came over to your windows and put a hose up there and put toxic gas into your house, you would call the authorities, right? You would have some boundaries. So if you're allowing your ex to spew venom through email, through text, you don't have to read it. You can block them. You can block them from your phone. You can block them from your email. You don't have to let that gas into your life. And so those are ways that you need to create boundaries for yourself so that you don't allow that to happen, and put structure even around parenting so that we only communicate via email, or we have to go to our family wizard because I want accountability in how you communicate with me, or I'm not willing to communicate with you in any other way about the children, even other than through our family wizard, which is a court-ordered app that helps you prove that he's still being abusive. And so I think there's things that you can do that steward the amount of toxicity that comes your way.
And as long as you take the high road and do the right things, I've sometimes seen, even in my own divorce, that short term you're both furious and angry with yourself, and you can do all these stupid things to try to hurt each other. But sometimes if you each get to a place of healing, that becomes the past. And at some point, if people change, which we know doesn't always happen, then you can get to a point where you cooperate. And even if you do, it still can get to some points. I remember one Christmas Eve, my son said to me, Dad wants me to be with him on Christmas Eve, and you want me to be with them. I love you both. You guys figure it out. So it doesn't always work out, but you want to go in that direction if it is possible. But otherwise, just protect yourself.
Yeah. So here's a question. What if they lie only once that you know of? How do you know they won't do it again? How can he prove it?
Well, that gets into maybe you want to bring another person, a counselor or somebody into the relationship. It sounds like you're asking, how do you rebuild trust? And do you know they only lied once? And what are the ways that you take those calculated risks?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. And I think when it's a big lie, it like sexual betrayal, it may be even going through a lie detector program that they have now with sexual addicts to see if they're telling the truth. That may give you a little bit more reassurance that, yes, this was the only time and there wasn't a string of other kinds of things. But most men who are addicted to, whatever it is, prostitutes or pornography, whatever, they lie a lot, and they only confess to what they're caught. So one of the things I would say is, did he confess this lie or did you catch him? Because sometimes someone who lies and confesses that, I lied about that, I'm really sorry, you can build more trust, because none of us are perfect, and so we might lie sometimes, and then we own it and we confess it. But if you caught him in something and that's the only lie I've ever, I have more doubt about that.
Yeah, me too.
All right, let's see. Here is one last question. Is there always just one abuser and one victim in an abusive relationship, or can both be abusive and both be traumatized by each other? That's a loaded question. So the Bible says that, stop biting and devouring each other or you will destroy each other. So I think we can have a toxic way of arguing and fighting that is toxic and traumatizing to each. And I think that can be abusive, both. But when we talk about abuse in our circles with Conquer and stuff, what we're really talking about is not just arguing poorly or calling each other names or those kind of things, but we're talking about a power dynamic or power differential where one person has more power over another, whether it's physical power, financial power, sexual power, spiritual power, where the oppressed and the oppressor relationship is more obvious that way, that you don't have a voice, so it's not like, so if that's oppressed, oppressor, the controlling aspects of the relationship are not there, and you're just both fighting like cats and dogs for your way or because you think you're right, I think it will take at least one of you to own that and to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to teach our kids that this is normal, and begin to be healthy and start to change those things. I do think that we can traumatize each other, even innocently, by driving too fast or getting in a car accident. I mean, we traumatize things. Trauma can happen in all different kinds of ways. But when we're talking about an abusive relationship, we're usually talking about an abuser and a victim. And maybe sometimes when the victim starts to resist her husband, his control over her, and she starts to resist that, she might do it in sinful ways that traumatize him. But it's still that dynamic of power over, and she's trying to resist that power over. Just like, if we have Martin Luther King, who resisted racial injustice in a nonviolent way, but he still resisted, right? And then he ended up in jail and he ended up shot, actually. And then we have people who resist that in a more sinful way, and that causes damage and trauma to other people, but they're resisting something that's wrong, and they're resisting that oppressive kind of thing. So you have to look at the bigger picture and not just that moment.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't know how to be in a healthy relationship. For instance, I grew up with a rageaholic father who was very abusive. The only kind of anger I knew was the toxic kind of anger. So I had no skills to what do I do to handle my anger in a constructive way. So sometimes it's owning it and then gaining the skills and creating the habits that we, whether we're in this relationship or not, that we can begin to form healthy relationships.
And again, I think for our women, we can have a lot of compassion perhaps on our husbands who grew up in that kind of environment, whose father raised, whose mother's raised, who they don't know how to do it. But that person still has to be in a place of saying, I see that what I'm doing is toxic, and I see,
Oh, yeah.
and I need to work on learning these skills. And if that's not
Right.
happening, and it's just a bunch of excuse making and don't make me mad and I won't act like this, then you can't really fix it.
No. And we women are good at coming up for reasons why they did these bad things. Well, they did it because of what you just said. They had a bad home.
Yeah, lots of us had a bad home and we don't do these things. So we have other choices. Yeah. One more question and then we're going to be done. So she says, I'm having a hard time accepting the abuse and not feeling guilty and trying to move forward. What can I do?
She's having trouble moving forward, even though she admits she had been in an abusive situation.
I'm not sure why she feels guilty. So not feeling guilty. I think I'm just going to make it up. She's feeling guilty because she's trying to move on. And somehow that feels wrong for her to just say, I'm not doing this anymore, and give up and move on.
Yeah. Well, no matter how she feels there again, it's getting into a healthy group that people remind you of what is true. And what is true is you moving forward and not staying stuck, you healing and creating a new future for yourself.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, a lot of us have been told as Christian women that it's up to us to save our marriage at all costs because that's what God would want us to do. And so when we decide we're not doing that, we feel guilty, like somehow we broke one of God's rules. So let me reframe it for her in just a different way. I think that as you get healthier and as you get stronger, whether you're in Conquer, whether you're in another group or, you know, whatever, and you work on you and you stop that toxic dance, whether you're too passive, whether you're reactive, whether you're resisting in a sinful way, whatever you need to do to stop that toxic dance. Obviously, your husband's going to notice. He can't help it. You're not dancing the same crazy step anymore. That doesn't mean your marriage is going to get better, but it does create a little bit of a crisis where that you can say, I'm not doing that anymore. I think it's damaging to me. It's damaging to you. It's damaging to our children that I never speak up, that I never say no. I'm not willing to be dishonest with you anymore. I hate the way that our marriage is. And if we don't make some changes, I'm not going to continue it this way. I'm willing to work on it this way, but I'm not willing to work on it your way. So either we work on it and you make some changes too, or it's not sustainable this way. And so I think you can invite him to healthy change too as you make your changes. What happens is we get so caught in trying to change them and they resist, and then we give up and want a divorce where we're not doing our work. So do your work. And if he begins to balk at that, you can invite him and say, hey, I believe that God's calling me to grow. He's calling me to mature. He's calling me to speak up to you because what you're doing is sinful and I'm not going to enable that anymore. And that takes a lot of guts. But it gives him a chance to have a splash of cold water in his face saying, I'm not gonna honor a fool anymore. You know, the Bible tells you don't honor because it just enables their foolishness to continue. I'm not gonna honor a fool. What you're doing is foolish. What you're doing is wicked. What you're doing is sinful. And I'm not gonna stand by and be silent about that. I'm not rubbing your nose in it. I'm just saying what you're doing is harmful to our children and our relationship. And I'm inviting you to make some changes. And he may or he may not. But if you then leave, why would you feel guilty for that?
Well, and here's another question. Speaking of guilt. So you have this guilt now. How will your guilt be in 5-10 years because you didn't show your children healthy relationships, or you didn't heal, or you didn't do what you needed to do to grow? That's a different kind of guilt than you might be experiencing now. And so you need to look at that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's remind them one more place where they can find this Rebuild course if they're interested, or at least get on your mailing list and find out more about you.
Oh, yes. And it's for people who have been separated and divorced. And we're talking about moving from those feelings of loss to hope and renewal. And it's at Georgia Shaffer, SHAFFER.com. /rebuild. And it gives the dates, the times, and registration opens February 11th.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for doing this with us. And it's been fun.
It's fun.
You and miss not
Thank you.
with COVID and all that. We haven't been able to speak. Georgia and I speak together at a lot of conferences for the American Association of Counselors. So we always can connect there, and it's like crickets out there.
I know. I thought of that today. I thought I sort of miss seeing, I miss seeing Leslie, and I thought, well, it was usually conferences where we crossed paths.
I'm not there anymore. So Georgia and I used to live about 2 hours away, so we could figure it out.
Yeah.
When I lived closer, but now that it's further, you have to come to Arizona when it's non-COVID. Did you get your shot yet?
Friday I get my shot, my first.
Yeah. We're scheduled in February, so hopefully they'll have doses by then. Who knows? Yeah. All right. Thanks, girlfriend. I've enjoyed being with you.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care.
Everyone.